Hey guys, so I'm back with a new episode of the New Player's Guide. I did take a little break from streaming for a while just because of personal reasons and things along those lines. I don't have as much time as I used to, but I figured I would still kind of come back to address what everyone always asks for, which is a cavalry guide. Cavalry was simplified in 9.5 in terms of speed classes, which we'll get to in a little bit. Um, Overall, cavalry is probably one of the hardest aspects of NTW 3 for new players to get adjusted to. It's the most gamey. It requires a lot of clicking and micro and positioning and understanding units and recognizing them on the field. Um, it also is one of the few that has pure stats requirements and knowing what you're charging against. So like if you have example, the Blancs here are 19 melee attack with 11 morale and chakra stamina, high defense as well at 22. If you charged, say, this Dragoon, the Lumbasek, at 12 attack, 15 defense and 9 morale with no extra stats or anything like that, or abilities rather, um, one on one, the Blancs are going to wipe the floor with this unit every single time. Stars, general stars, the same. No inspires or anything else like that. Um, in terms of pure stats, cavalry is one of the few where every single time it matters. Because more or less, most cavalry engagements have at least one-on-one or 1v2 engagement versus like infantry where you can mask bad units with good units because you just have so many different battalions to you know mix and match in between. Um, and there's also the issue of like charging light cav at heavy cav and things along those lines, or like having a dragoon get attacked by a really high damage lancer. Um, there's just certain aspects of it that are always going to be, um, the pure knowledge of the mod. And not to mention, if you have 1,000 gold dragoon and you lose it in 2 seconds, you've now lost a tenth of your funds. You lost a major attacking power of your army and things along those lines as well. So Cav in general is just very tricky. It's high risk, high reward. Um, a lot of times people just don't know how to manage it very well, and then you end up with being at a deficit. So instead of having, your full 10,000 gold, you've now lost 1,000 gold off of it, or however much, and then you just keep losing assets, and then, that's how you're done. So cavalry is fairly important. Um, that being said, the basics of cavalry is what we're going to be going over this. I'm not going to go over like how to deploy them or anything like that. This is just purely informational. Um, so with 9.5, cavalry was simplified, as I previously mentioned. Uh, the major difference is in the speed classes and spotting range. So speed classes used to be up to C9, now it's up to C5. Uh, Generally speaking, the classes still retained their relation to the type of cavalry. So heavy cavalry is now all C1 for the armored heavies, instead of having a C1, C2 split for elite heavy cav versus just normal line heavy cav. So you can see that all armored heavies here in Mira 1812 are all C1. And if you wanted to compare it to even the elite heavy cav of Mira in 1806, those are also still C1. Um, so armored heavies, all C1 now. This is like your major breakthrough cavalry, offensive cavalry against, to be used against infantry. If you're using these slow C1s against enemy cavalry, then there's more or less a problem. Heavy cav should always, in my opinion at least, be utilized against infantry. Because that's where it can do the most damage due to the weight of the charge. Their defense is really high and things along those lines. The next category is C2, which is generally speaking the unarmored heavies. So things like this Gardekorps Saxon or the Prussian heavy cavalry is all C2. They're all unarmored. So for the French, generally speaking, C2s are elite. You have like units like Ledoux and this Garde Corps. For the Coalition, it's a mixed bag. You can have really good C2s, and you can also have really mediocre ones like these ones, which are basically like glorified Dragoons. Their main advantage over C1s is that they have increased walking speed and similar mass. So a charge by a C2 will have similar mass as like a C1 versus charging infantry with like a Dragoon. They're a little bit more of an all-rounder, and their speed, walking speed, helps them keep up with infantry and things along those lines. Um, the next class is C3, which is your basic line cavalry, aka Dragoons. Um, Dragoons do not dismount in this mod. There's like only a handful of cases where they ever dismounted in the Napoleonic Wars, and I think there was only one case where they even tried to fire their Dragoons off of horseback, and they got immediately backed off and routed. I don't remember which campaign it was. I think it was maybe 1809. Someone who is a Napoleonic's history nerd will be sure to comment in the comments below and correct me. Anyways, line cavalry is your all-arounder, jack of all trades, master of none types of cav. They do well against infantry, but not exceptionally well. I wouldn't ever charge a dragoon at fresh line and expect it to break it. But in the middling parts of the game where infantry is starting to look a little tired, taking losses, dragoons will do a lot of good work there. Their mass is medium, so you can hit infantry and break up their formation. They'll trade upwards against elite light cav because of their mass over the elite light cavs. Trying to think of anything else with dragoons. They're faster, so they keep up with your army better. You're more flexible because of their overall speed. They have some scouting, but it's not great. It's definitely better than a C1 or something like that. But yeah, this is like your all-around bread and butter type of cavalry. The French generally have really solid dragoons. The Russians also have really solid dragoons. If you want like a very again, flexible cavalry option for a fairly affordable prices, dragoons are where you go. Next category would be the C4s, which includes the light cav and the old lancer cav options. If it says light cavalry, it'll have good spotting range. Lancer cavalry has slightly less spotting, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. I'd have to double check, and I'll put it in the comments. Either way, light cavalry is going to be one of your best spotting cavalry in the game. Always have at least one for spotting with your army if you're new. It at least lets you see where the enemy is going and give yourself preparation. Anything above, I would say like this 15 melee attack with good morale and decent defense, it would be considered a good light cav, good to excellent. So like this one down here, the Lauzon Patriote, 18, 21, 13. Like that's stats on par with or better than most dragoons, but it's light cav, so it's fast. And same with the Toujours Présent here, 17, 20, 12 chakra stamina. So you can kind of cycle charge these units to try and gain light cav advantage in the early game and blind the enemy to your movements by removing their light cav. Lancers are unique in the game in that they have a different charge bonus from other cavalry. As Lancers, the game reflects it by the initial shock damage gets a bonus of 2.5 times their charge, versus a normal cavalry will just get their normal charge bonus. So this one's 4, and this one's 6. So this actually gets, what is that, like 18 or something like that charge bonus for, I think it's like a certain amount of seconds. And then after that, their stats decrease completely across the board. I think it's by 50%, their defense and melee attack for a brief period. So Lancers are really good as like a one-hit charge in, charge out type of unit. It's why you see them often get used as a cycle charging. Lancers can trade really well upward as a result. So like these sorts of lower cost, affordable Lancers can trade really well against something like a Dragoon that's more expensive because of that initial kind of burst damage. They're very, very hard to use and get that charge bonus every single time, especially if with how like targeting and things like that work in the mod. Um, so you have to really manage them to make sure that you get the unit to full acceleration, and then it also completes the charge animation in order to get the Lancer damage. Um, and then what else is there? Oh, there's some specialty units like C5, which has technically the furthest scouting range, and I believe they're also the fastest cavalry you can have. There's It's basically like irregular cavalry, so you see these ones are missile, aka bow cav. These ones are just really fast, light cav. Actually, they have guns, so and then you also have the dromedaires, which is the camels. Um, they're unique in terms of their weight. I believe it's somewhere between heavy cav and dragoons. Um, so just be aware whenever you see camels, don't charge light cav into them unless you have really, really good light cav and you can catch them in the rear. But frontally charging them will end in a bad day for you. Um, so yeah, that basically summarizes the speed classes and the approximate roles of each cav. So you have heavy cavalry again for breaking down infantry, um, a slightly faster elite C2 for breaking down infantry, um, dragoons for an all-arounder. You can use it for anti-cav or for pressuring infantry that's retreating or infantry that's tired, but I wouldn't use it against fresh infantry. That's a good way to throw them away. Light cav is really good for the initial part of the game and then in the late game. I would never use light cav to try to counter enemy infantry until the infantry's been worn down. A lot of people also use light cav, like these really crappy, cheapy light cavs, to try and snipe artillery and guns and stuff like that. I would never commit more than one or two gold, like two of these units for that type of purpose. And then Lancers are good for trading upward in terms of overall performance. Um, and then yeah, so I was mentioning earlier that stats are really important with light cav. So you can see here, the difference between 9, 11, 9 and 15, 18, 10. This unit is 400 gold and this unit is 828, and it's for good reason. This unit will not survive a majority of charges against any competent enemy cavalry. Um, it's mostly there, I would say, as like filler or scouts. Same with like something like this, where it's 9197. Like you're paying 250 gold for it. Its role is going to be for scouting, and maybe you'll get a lucky side charge with them to debuff enemy cavalry. But you kind of really need to make sure that anytime you're looking at your cavalry and enemy cavalry, that you know what type of cav am I looking at, and then what type of cav do I have that's in front of it. So if your only option is you have a light cav and you're looking at a heavy cav, it's not really worth it to charge your 1,000 gold light cav at a heavy. The heavy cav will eat it alive 9 times out of 10, and you're going to lose your light cav because that's just how mass and things like that work, and the defense and other stats along those lines. Stats are also really important for cav. Sorry, like not stats. The abilities, rather. So things like stamina are really important. Shock res is really important. Stamina means that your unit will regen its from tired states faster, so you can keep using them throughout the engagement. Whereas shock res will help your unit stay alive if it gets caught out. So like if a Lancer hits this unit and wipes out 20 models on a good charge, the unit might stabilize its morale and stay in the fight. Whereas a unit without shock res will probably instantly rout. As with all units, cav can come back if once from routing, so you want to kind of make sure that you keep that in mind. And if a unit is above half strength in a cav engagement, if you can, you'll want to farm it down to make sure that it doesn't get, it won't come back, the enemy cav. Generally speaking, for cavalry, I try to at least have an idea of what I want the cavalry to do. if I'm going for light cav superiority, I'll have to get, you want to get like good light cav and then maybe pair it with horse guns so you have something mobile. Um, if you're going for like an all-arounder type cav, there's critical mass for everything. These are obviously cav cores, so it works a little bit differently from your traditional like time of war faction if you're trying to pick your army out. Um, but if you want good amount of dragoons, like 4 to 6 or something like that, and you want at least 2 of those to be above 15 or 16 melee attack to actually do work, and then have some that are supporting. So you can kind of see that in these brigades here of dragoons. So you have one really good one and one supporting dragoon naturally in how the dragoons are organized. So try to think of it as that way. Like you can either have your throwaway dragoon take the initial charge and then side charge with the other one, or vice versa if you think that you need a good dragoon to hold while the other one gets in the flank attack. But yeah, generally speaking, you really need to look at stats heavily for dragoons and any other cavalry. Size is also important. So like this dragoon is 44 men for 365 gold. The stats are better than say this one here, but this one's 70 men. There is a good chance that the 70 man, just by pure numbers, will beat the smaller dragoon. That's because it can take more casualties and things along those lines. So you got to really like play your cards right. As I mentioned at the beginning, dragoons and cavalry in general, like all of it is based on stats, skill, and recognizing what the enemy has. There's also, a chance that you run into, I don't know, like the small garde du corps of the Imperial Guard. So like this is only 36 models, but it will eat a quality light cav because it's a C2. So, recognizing the bearskin cap of the immortals on the battlefield can save your cav. Recognizing lancers, recognizing dragoons, really just takes time and practice and more or less like losing your units to start to get good at it. But yeah, don't buy too much cav at the beginning if you don't know how to use it. Like if you don't know how to use Ledoux, you'll get it destroyed in 0.002 seconds to 1 square, and then you've wasted 4,000 gold or whatever it is. Skill will make Ledoux strong. It can take some of the tanking damage, and yeah, maybe you'll get lucky a few times, but overall, you always want to make sure that you have an idea of how to actually use the unit. And same with like the Muscadines and other guard cav. Cav cores in general are always difficult. But yeah, in general, always try to bring at least one light cav for scouting, and then focus on whatever else you need to build to complement your army. If you're going for like a light infantry speedy build, don't really bring heavy cav because the heavy cav is not going to keep up with L6s very well. In that case, you might want dragoons so that you can force squares and things like that to make sure that your light infantry can get in there and start shooting. With UK, you would probably want to bring some of their elite light cav to kind of hem in the enemy and force them to stand in front of you and shoot while you're shooting and machine gunning them down with UK infantry. And likewise, if you go for like a really big, cheapy, defense in depth type of army, heavy cav might be really nice for that. You can use the heavy cav as your attacking army or your attacking wing, while you have cheapy infantry to hold and pin, and grind down the enemy to get them prepared for that heavy cav charge. With heavy cav, I try to bring always at least 2, because 1 by itself gives you a very narrow chance, and they're 1,000 gold, or up to 2,000 gold sometimes in time of war factions. So having 2 gives you 2 options to try and position them correctly and gain that kind of advantage that heavy cav should have over the infantry. But anyways, that's it for today. I will probably have more videos depending on how much time I have. And maybe we'll go over a more like advanced cavalry use. Maybe I'll be able to pull some clips of how cavalry's been used in some of the clan games and things like that and make comments on it. I think that's really the only way to actually showcase good and bad cavalry use is by showing it as being played. I can't really like do a like practice lobby or anything like that because honestly it doesn't really showcase all of the details that you would need to know. But let me know what you think, and then until next time, thanks so much.